July tag meeting, and welcome to our tag chairs, Peter and Stuart, that'll be talking a bit later along. But if we just move on to the next slide, I'll do a quick welcome to country. And Powering Skills organisation acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. And we pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Thank you and welcome. I'll hand over to Pete to run us through the agenda.
Thank you. So welcome everybody. Instead of going around the room and doing introductions today, we've all been in many of these. So if you can all just pop your name, organisation and email in the chat, just as an introduction to everybody who might not know you. But otherwise, I think we've seen each other's faces often enough. We're going to have some updates on projects and maintenance that PSO are currently working on relevant to this tag group. Summary of the request for advice and the tag report and the importance of that, some matters for discussion, and then we'll be open to floor, and then we'll close the meeting. So hopefully it won't take up too much of everybody's day.
Thanks, Pete. So yeah, I'll just run through some of the projects just quickly that PSO are working on. I've been working on a bit of an update. The UET rescue units, they are with the skills ministers at the moment, so we're looking for that one to be wound up reasonably quickly. The creating an energy sector pathway. So this particular one is looking at those Cert 2 career start and the new Cert 2 in that gateway space. So those people that have been involved in that will know that we've been out for those consultations and had those webinars and so forth. But as you can see on the right there, the little QR code, of course, for any updates to our projects. Consolidated units of competency is with the skills ministers as well. That one's more or less wound up. We're just waiting for the final outcomes on those. I suppose the reason why, you know, a couple of those things have been delayed, that rescue units and those competency development one, you know, we don't want to put blame anywhere, but there was an election a little while back. Things go into caretaker mode, so things just taken a little bit longer to get through to the skills ministers. The ERAC essential performance capabilities. This one is officially wound up now. So all of those findings, as you may well know, will flow straight into that UEE full training package review. So that's everything that ERAC says needed to be into, that's needed to be a electrician, needs to go into that new electrician qual and the various subsets of units and restricted type licensing units. The minor changes to various training packages. Look, we're plotting away in the background on those, but you'll see that most of those minor changes now, we got to most of the urgent ones, but the minor changes will now flow into that UEE full training package review, where we'll get all of those minor changes fixed up and those little errors. And then, of course, the 10 new projects that PSO have been working on, which again is on our website. I won't go into every single one of those projects now. There was about 4 or 5 research and about 4 or 5 training package development type ones, but that does include the full UEE review as well. So yeah, that's a bit of an update on that, and I'll flick back to Pete, who's just going to give us a bit of a review on the tag stuff.
Yep, cool. So the February tag report, so we had 37 there, respond 31 in attendance, 16 requests for advice. So, and the breakdown of the location, so fair spread across the country, which is good. And the key one being the next slide, the response for the request for advice. There was 8 questions posed throughout December and January. And I think we're going to get a bit of an update on them, aren't we, Phil?
Yeah. I'm not sure if we've got
or do we have
there.
to click and go to the link to see
Yeah.
them? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the link everybody who attended the tag meeting gets that link, so they should be pretty aware of where those questionings were. And Rachel's just popped that back into the chat for us.
Into the chat. Cool. So have a look and see where that went. But yeah, important anything, make sure you do your RFAs.
Yep. The next couple of slides we got is more around our open discussions, the next 3 or 4 slides, and what we want to just talk about, and Stuart and Pete will help lead these discussions, is around, and the first one's around nesting, and the reason I suppose we put this slide up is that of part of the full UEE review that we're undertaking at the moment, we're doing a bit of to get everything started, we're doing that desktop analysis of all of the units of competency, and there is a lot of units of competency and a lot of qualifications. But one of the components of that is looking at the diplomas, the advanced diplomas, and the pathways into those diplomas. And we've had someone looking at them, one of the team members, and they're not electrician. They've been in the industry for a while, but they're coming back to us and going with some questions around how these diplomas, advanced diplomas, are set up. For instance, they were looking at the advanced diploma of electrical engineering technology, the electrical side of ones, and they're going, why do we have CD 0019 in there, which is basically the old builder toolbox for those people in the trade? Like, a lot of these advanced diplomas have Cert 2 units in there, Cert 3 units in there, and they're coming back and going, why is that so? Do we need to have Cert 2 units, Cert 3 units in our diplomas and advanced diplomas? Should there be Cert 2, Cert 3 units in advanced diplomas? Have we got the pathways right for these type of units? Is some of the questions that we've been asking along the way. And I suppose it's probably open to the floor. Has anyone got any thoughts, any questions around this? Another thing, just while you're thinking about that, is the enrolments into some of our higher qualifications. And when I say higher, even some of the Cert 4s, Cert 4s diplomas, advanced diplomas, are very low. So people aren't undertaking these qualifications, and now's our opportunity within this full review to have a good look at this and see, why aren't we undertaking this? Have we got the mix right? Have we got the pathway right? So yeah, just sort of opening up the floor. Anyone want to have a bit of a say, have a bit of a comment? Got Sarah there with your hand up. Sarah.
G'day, Phil. Just wondering
G'day.
if maybe that's due to how, if they're accessible, like through them being on scope around the place with the different RTOs. Could that be part of that problem? That's what we hear from our members.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyone else? Anyone got any thoughts on that about the scoping? It will be something that we'll be looking at as part of that initial desktop analysis as well. Sarah, is some of the scope and where they are there. I was having a bit of a chat to Steve Hall in one of our other meetings. He mentioned in WA that there's some specific, I think it was advanced diplomas that are used over there, and I think it was Pete mentioned that there's other ones used to be used, but maybe the units aren't correct and that sort of thing. So Yeah, just opening up to the floor. Any questions there? Any thoughts? Timothy?
Yeah, g'day, Phil.
Yeah.
So I'm not speaking on behalf of the business that I'm representing, but as a contractor, electrical
Yeah,
contractor,
yeah, for sure.
like a diploma as a general electrician for the domestic, even commercial sectors, sole trader type stuff, like there's just no need to even go down that path. So
Mm,
whether your numbers are based on, if you got 50,000 Sparkies across the country or in one state, just doing domestic stuff, what's the point of even going down that path? Larger business maybe, but SA Power Networks, that's down our engineering department. So once again, the lines person or the electrician working for our business, going down that pathway is just limited opportunities and it's sort of not worth the effort type stuff. So
no, very good point. Very good point. And that was what some of the early thoughts were coming back in. Do you need to have in some of these diplomas and advanced diplomas, if it's a different skill set or a different job occupation, perhaps, is there a need to have all those Cert 3 type units in there? If it's a design type advanced qualification, that these people aren't going to be out installing cables and doing installations and electrical work. Do they need to have all those Cert 3 units of competency in there? Is it a different, is it a different skill set or a different area? Yeah, no, that's some good thoughts around the contractors. Michael?
Yeah, hey Phil. I think a lot of with the diploma and advanced diploma units, the higher level units currently have prerequisites in them, and that's why most of those Cert 3 units are in there. And with the advanced diploma, I know with TAFE SA, we ran both of them in years past. SA Power Networks put their control guys or the operators, I think, through advanced diplomas. But we did do basically there was two. One that had the old G105 capstone in it, which was for licensed people, and then the technology version was for non-licensed. So they still did all of those Cert 3 electrical units because a lot of them were prerequisite to those high level ones.
Do you think they'd need to be prerequisites? Is there a different skill set needed there? Do they need all those Cert 3 units, Michael? Any thoughts on that? Or
probably not all of those lower end ones, but probably the third year, the design sort of units, they would probably need that.
Yeah. Stuart?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's ages ago now. In the 90s, I worked for a company building inverters before they were cool. So custom design, big engineering and research and development team. And we actually employed electricians with an advanced diploma in our testing area as sort of technicians to test these systems. And that's really in my whole career, that's really the only place where I've seen the electrician with an advanced diploma used, and they were almost impossible to recruit. So there wasn't many around, and I suspect it's probably the same even today, 25 years later, 30 years later. Geez, I'm old.
Yeah. No, some good thoughts. Michael?
Yeah, just to sort of follow on with what the theme seems to be going, at least up in southeast Queensland where I am, the only roles I've seen advertised wanting the advanced diploma was for Energex and PowerLink. So it's sort of that level of employer, and they were taking any electrician and putting them through that diploma themselves because, yeah, as has been said, very few electricians get any benefit from the advanced diploma or higher.
Yeah, no, good thought. David?
Yeah, we looked at putting the diploma of HVAC and refrigeration engineering on scope about 2 years ago. Went quite a way along that journey, and we did have people that were expressing interest in the particular program. We've been discussing it with refrigeration associations as well, and we clearly see there's a need to build that gap between having a skill set and professional engineering, which the diploma with an articulation agreement into the engineering, mechanical engineering would work really, really well. But I'll put my hand up and say, in all honesty, day to day, trying to get teachers to support the Cert 3 is nearly taking up all of our time. So it's one thing to put it on scope. It's another to actually get people that can deliver that material.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. And I think it is flowing into some of the work we've been doing in one of our other vet blueprint that you've probably heard about, looking at, how the RTOs and that system works with capacities and those sorts of things, and being able to actually train some of these things that they want to put on scope, and the cost around putting some of these things on scope to deliver as well. Yeah. Was there another hand I saw fly up there? Yeah, Steve.
Yes, I think I did my electrical engineering certificate back in the 80s, so that's how far back I go. Back then it was a paraprofessional type qualification that allowed you to get into design type work and support professional engineers. At some point, and back then too, engineers could do a wiring course that would allow them to get the electrician's supervisor certificate. So I think the issue in industry is the fact that we're having professional engineers and others that are supervising others but aren't actually doing any installation work themselves. So it may even evidence itself as a I guess a licensing issue. The fact that there needs to be some kind of license for engineers to be able to do supervisory work without having to have the skill sets associated with the installation work. So I don't know how industry. I mean, they've been grappling with that for decades, how to deal with that, and one of their solutions was to then create this pathway so that going from Cert 2, 3, diploma, advanced diploma, associate diploma, or associate degree, and then to the degree, it was a pathway to give people the ability to get those installation type units, and then the capstone, which basically was the only pathway to get an electrician's license. So I guess looking at it from a licensing perspective would be a different lens to put on it, and so what are we actually trying to achieve? Because like I said, back in the 80s, the electrical engineering certificate, which it was called, is basically the equivalent of today's advanced diploma, but it was never intended for someone. We had people in that course that weren't apprentices or tradespeople, and they were looking to do paraprofessional type work.
Yeah, no, some good points there. Yeah, and I do recall, and I know there's some talk about engineers getting licenses and then backdooring this and that sort of thing, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that. But as we go into doing, as we get into some roundtables and some SME groups on this, I'm sure a lot more of that, of the whys and the hows and how these things, how these diplomas and so forth are all set up will come to light. But no, this is some good points there. Melissa.
Hi. Yeah, yesterday I was with an ESI organisation, and they said they use the licensed electrician course as their base, but certainly moving forward with renewable energy and all this sort of stuff, they're looking at all their design level design work, ASP3 type scheme work, designer work to get people to do diplomas and advanced diplomas really. So certainly the Cert 3, they see that as a mandatory must-have. Where the units are nested and how it relates, you'd have to do a mapping arrangement for that, but certainly they see that as their base. And then, you know, and a must-have before they give anyone to do the diploma or the advanced diploma in the design area of ESI.
No, thanks for that. Good. Yeah. Any more thoughts around that? So just to finish off on that discussion, we will be obviously continuing this through our full training package review. So if there's anybody out there who has a real keen interest in this, I'd advise you to jump onto that SME group. Or if you've got some colleagues through your RTOs and connections that you'd like on this slide that's just come up now, jump on there and try and get them onto that diploma and advanced diploma. And as I said, while it says advanced diploma and advanced diploma, it's looking at those pathways, you know, the pathway from the certs through to make sure those diplomas and advanced diplomas. And I think it was, I can't remember who that was, who came on early and said those contractors potentially don't see an interest in doing those, you know, diplomas, advanced diplomas. That's where hopefully in our other groups we can get these skill sets that are right out there that will be, you know, getting those skill sets written correctly so that those contractors can undertake, you know, skill sets in those areas that might be some advantage to those contractors. For instance, you know, whether it's renewable type energies in the solar space or EV space or something along those ones, data and voice even, that are really meaningful to those contractors along the way. All right, just to move on to this next one before we have a bit more of discussion. I'll just go back. Sorry, Rachel. Just to go over this one for those people that have missed our insights and some of our other stuff. So where we are going with our full UEE review is that we're looking for subject matter experts. We're looking for to get groups in each of these areas listed here that can really get into the sort of the nuts and the bolts of the units of competency and the qualifications there. And that's where I sort of mentioned before that some of these groups might have 10, 20, 30 people in there. But some of the ones like the fire and security might be, you know, around the 10 or whatever. We're not sort of limited. What we're looking for there is the expertise that these people have that can really give us an insight into the units of competency and the qualifications that are there and what we're going to develop. The first step is, as we've mentioned, is PSO undertaking that desktop analysis, having a look at what we've got, getting some enrolment figures out there, looking at the electives, who's enrolling into what electives. The next step after our 25th of July is to get these groups together and start looking at that information, looking at those qualifications, going, what do we need in our qualifications moving forward that's going to future-proof us moving forward, and involving the new technologies and those sorts of things. So, yeah. And then I'll push back over to perhaps Stuart and Peter to guide this one along. Hopefully.
Oh, yeah, Stuart, I've got a bit of background noise here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think this was just to have a general discussion on those points on the screen. Are the EL units up to date with emerging technologies, fit for purpose? Do they need to be merged or simplified, and are there any gaps? So we just open it up for discussion.
Yeah, and while Pete's got a bit of noise, I'll just add to that, you know, like, you know, what do people want to see in our new units? Like, as we review these, you know, we have a lot of people come back and say, we don't want the same old thing, you know, we don't want to cut and paste of what was there before. So what do you want to see in there? And that's will be what those SME groups will be talking about. But the other information that we come back through from you and from you stakeholders as well, what do you want in there? You know, should the common units underpin all the qualifications, you know, hence what they've called common, but, you know, should they be sitting across all of the qualifications, you know? Do we need more EL type units? Do we need less? One question that we've been found, what is renewables? You know, is it just another energy source? Where does solar fit into this? You know, they're the questions that we want people to talk to us about. So yeah, just opening up to the group. What do you guys want to see?
I know myself in the past, I've had people say to me about the DC machines unit, saying, is it relevant? The only time an electrician is going to see it is the battery drill he's hanging on to, and he's not going to fix that. He'll probably get a new one if it breaks. So is it relevant still? I know the mining sector in WA will say that it is, because all our haul packs have got DC motors on them, and so do the trains. Well, most of the haul packs are AC now. I think the trains are still a mix of DC and AC.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost a bit of noise. So, and I'd like to see, you know, things like CD 19 and 20, I think are really good Cert 2 units, but do we need a Cert 3 electrician? They're doing that type of work on the job relevant to their area. If they're a domestic electrician and they're not doing any, you know, chem set studs or dynabolts or that, because they don't do that type of work, but hopefully with what they do over time, they've then got the skill set to be able to go, oh, here's a job out of left field. I might be better off reading the manufacturer's specifications and going with a dynabolt or a chem set stud, or in this situation. You know, I think they're great teaching units for Cert 2 kids who don't have that workplace experience. And yeah, they're two that I see we could, you know, we don't necessarily need to be doing in the RTO space, or make that more of a on the job type unit where we're not worrying about knowledge tests and whatnot. It's just, have you picked up enough of that type of activity in your workplace? Yes, no. Yes, you have. No further. No, you don't. Here's some training gaps we need to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Tracy? You might be on mute.
Hang on,
Tracy,
try that. Is that working now?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So you've opened this up to everyone here this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So
definitely.
probably we're sort of looking or dealing with. We've got EL 8, 9, and 10, which is the heating unit, lighting unit, and the socket outlets. Just bringing those units up to date. And I think you've mentioned that with the first dot point here about, you know, about smart systems, etc., as well. And also just trying to probably, some of them may need like some like their range of conditions just extended a bit, because we're adding in, say for heating, we're adding in the 3 heat switch, which doesn't mention it, sort of mentions thermostats and semostats, I suppose, as part of it. So yeah, those 3 units. So things like that, I suppose, just like you're saying, bringing them up to date, seeing what technologies are around and things like that. And also the CD 0007 as well. I think that mentions first aid and bits and pieces like that, but they're actually doing first aid as a unit now. Things like that. So some things could be taken out perhaps. And that, you know, that's just my thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point,
Tracy,
you know.
Phil, with the EL9 lighting, I mean, there's stuff in there that we're teaching them how to fault find iron pellets, fluoros and mercury vapours. They're going to go and unplug that device, throw it in the bin and bang up an LED. So do we need to go into that level of fault finding in a Cert
Yeah.
3 anymore. Yes, there's people who are going to do it and need to do it, but
Yeah.
not necessarily everybody needs to know how to do it. So
That's right, because it also mentions about replacing faulty stuff. Like with an LED light nowadays, you're probably going to replace it, throw it out, buy a new one, and replace it with a new one. And I realise fault finding is important, but with some things, maybe we just need to look at the unit and really sort of go a little bit further, into them. Yeah, see what's relevant. Cool.
Steve White?
Yeah, I think we sort of lost a bit of the introductory wiring type stuff in first year. We used to have like some back in the module days. We had some elementary stuff where we were doing cable preparation, terminations, isolation procedures, all those sort of things. We're sort of having to sort of fudge that into things like the drawing unit and the EL23. So I think we need to go back to concentrating on rather than these sort of little tidbits of units, back to larger units where, I mean, I think CD19, CD20 could be combined into a single practical unit where you could do some wiring stuff in there. It's something a bit more relevant. EL8, 9 and 10, we really lost our way with those calling, we went from G33, which was all about apparatus and circuits to, there's one unit that's, I think 20 points, 20 hours delivery on socket outlets. And we changed it to evaluate something or other. And so I'm assuming that was an attempt to try and bring those units into an elect fitter qualification. So, but within the unit itself, it talks about installing cables. And so we've got fitters doing those units, but they're not allowed to do any installation work. So it's a bit of a halfway sort of position. I think those units like 8, 9 and 10 could go back to a full, 72, 80 hour unit where we're giving them the full range of skills in installing apparatus across the board, whether it's socket outlets, lighting, heating, the full range of gear. So, I just think we need to sort of get back to that rather than this piecemeal approach. And having larger units makes it easier for an RTO to deliver and assess from a compliance perspective. Because if we're going to have to stick with the two occasions, we had G33 where we could have a midway and an end of semester assessment for knowledge and skills. As soon as we broke that up into 3 separate units, now suddenly we've got 6 assessments we've got to do for each in terms of skills. 6 assessments across the board. So, yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be designing just for delivery, but it certainly is an aspect we need to consider. And there doesn't seem to be any continuity from first year through to third year in the installation area. We sort of wait till we get to a unit like EL12, which essentially was just the old G103, G104 banged together. And it originally came from we took stuff out of the old advanced wiring unit, which then became EL18, previously G107, and we put together a unit with caravan parks and medical centres, all this sort of thing, and called it EL12, which essentially was an on-the-job unit for installation of cables and apparatus. So it really is, the whole qualification really is a hodgepodge, and we need to get back to saying, well, what are we trying to? We're trying to train electricians, and let's give them some continuity from first year through to third year. Just on that too, what I was talking about before with the engineers, I think there's almost 2 pathways through our qualification. There's an installation pathway and there's a design pathway. And I think if we were going to persist with providing a path through Cert 3, Cert 4 diploma and so on, then you could have a design pathway with your EL18s and so forth that led on to higher qualifications without them having to do the installation type units. So yeah, just some thoughts.
Yeah, no, some great thoughts, Steve. And I like, just before I go to Timothy, I like what you mentioned about we sort of need to take a step and have a think about what the qualification is for. And as part of the new training package framework that we have to undertake as part of a JSC, well, all the JSCs have to undertake, is to look at the purpose of the qualification. So what is the actual purpose of the qualification? You mentioned it there, is that the purpose of the 30820 is to produce electricians. So have we got the right units of competency in that qualification to produce the outcome of an electrician. So it's going to the beginning. So yes, we're going to be having a look at units as SME groups, and we're going to have, you know, further conversations, but some of those early conversations will be exactly what you said there, was Steve, was what is the purpose of this qualification? What is the purpose of the fitter qualification? What is the purpose of the electrical qualification, the electrician qualification? And then build those units in there to make sure that that we're getting the outcome that we need, and then add those technologies into those units of competency. But yeah, no, some good thoughts. Timothy.
Yeah, g'day. I thought I'd show my face. So, hi everyone. Probably everything's been said that I was gonna say in the end. Just from our side of things with SA Power Networks, we've got the power line and we've got the electrical, but we're finding that we're getting a lot of renewable energy issues on our system. With SA being what 90%, 100%, 150% renewable, depending on if it's a sunny day and that type of thing. So, yeah, looking at seeing if we can get some more renewable units out there into at least the core, just so that the general electrician or trainee just gets that idea of the impact that those those technologies have on our systems. But we've also, in line with some of those other subjects, looking at probably changing what's required in the subjects, like, for example, magnetics for our power line guys. Ironically, you know, when it comes to transformers, they just put one up and put one down on a pole. They don't actually inspect it, don't pull it apart. So, you know, we need to look into those units of competency, I suppose, and the elements and criteria as well, whether, you know, it's suitable for what they need to have, or, you know, and our electricians as well with what they sort of have to deal with protection systems and stuff like that. So, I just thought I'd agree with what everyone else is saying and add those couple of things on our side of things. So thanks.
Thanks, Timothy. Not to put you on the spot or anything, Timothy, but when you talk about the renewables, what sort of angle or what sort of area do you mean by that? Because we get quite a lot of feedback around, we need to do training in renewables, and everyone talks renewables. Can you just explain sort of what area or what you might be talking about there? Not to put you on the spot, but
it's probably more an awareness. So I'll get a bit technical. I'm not quite sure of the forum that's here, but when
I'm sure they like a bit of technical.
We're starting to have issues with harmonics and frequency modulation, both with switch mode power supplies from the customer, including solar systems, so the inverters that's going onto our network and is causing issues along those lines. So whether it's an awareness for the general electrician, or whether some of those solar packages that are part of the AS 4777 package, you know, whether some of that stuff is brought forward into as a core, just so that people understand, I suppose, that switch mode power supplies, LEDs, all that sort of computers actually do have an issue, or they cause problems on the network. And I'm pretty sure, like, it's definitely an SA, we've got our service installation rules, which sort of do get touched on with the AS3000 components in those units of competency. But, you know, we've got specific criteria now with dealing with harmonics and frequency modulation and, you know, DC ripple effects and all that stuff as part of those service install rules for the electrician. So I'm sure Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland would probably all have something along those lines as well as their installation rules. But yeah, we've got probably bigger problems than what has been said publicly with this renewable stuff. You know, even like generations systems and voltages and inputs and outputs. You know, so it's a highly complicated sort of area. There are a couple of units of competency out there dealing with this sort of type of stuff. What they are elude me at the moment, but We have discussed that some of those would be handy to put into the UEE package, so the electrician or the electrical worker does understand those effects, and then the implications to all the basically the network on the eastern border as well.
Yeah, and I suppose we're not going backwards with that sort of stuff, are we? It's all moving forward. So yeah, there's a lot of information. No, that's good. Who we got there? Sarah.
G'day there. We agree to an extent with the previous speaker's comment. We find that our apprentices across the country are telling us that the electives that are on offer at many RTOs are limited, and we think that it's a pretty sad day when apprentices are learning how to install a copper phone line and getting through their apprenticeship with that as their electives and never touching or seeing a solar panel or battery or anything else that's newer or emerging technology. So I think those elective streams could be a good point of discussion in the full training package review.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Sarah. And yeah, some good thoughts around the electives, and we do have some, there is some notes, as I mentioned before, going to that starting point and looking at that purpose of that qualification, and that qualification discussion will definitely centre around, what does it look like with elective groupings? Are there groups? Are there no groups? Are there specialisations? Are there core only? What are the pathways? What are the skill sets? So, yeah, I think there'll be some really some good conversations around that moving forward for sure. Alan. I think you might be right now, Alan.
That was the other bit's not. So, is it two?
You hear me now?
Yes, we can.
My
Yes, we
apologies
can.
for that. I should have checked
yep.
that.
Coming in
Continuing that discussion on renewables, I went through the half dozen units. It talks about, on renewable energy. Sorry, I missed that.
I think it's just a bit of noise in the background, I think.
Right, okay.
I think Tracy needs to mute.
I'm actually sitting at a graphic I'm doing for a presentation, and I'm looking at the use of solar panels and solar batteries for backup situations. There is a lot of overlap between what's being done for the renewable energy sides in terms of economics, but the backup situation is a little bit vague with what gets connected, how you size it, what needs to be done, what the benefits are. And the graphic I have in front of me relates to a presentation on Appendix M, which is backup power supplies in assisted living environments. So it's very much a use case where it draws together a whole heap of electrical work in terms of smart home wiring, assistive technology, medical equipment, backup power requirements, and the renewable energy side. So yeah, I'm coming at it from the other end, from the user point of view. How you incorporate that is the question.
No, some good questions there. Definitely some good points that we need to be considering moving along the line, and some of those user experiences is definitely what we need to be hearing as well. We got Tracy.
Yeah. I was just getting back to what Sarah was talking about with the electives. So yeah, and I agree with what she's saying. We tried to pick different electives, but we found that the some of the electives which had like I suppose the core, it wasn't in the core unit, or it wasn't as a core unit, and then the prerequisites weren't also fitting as well. So I think, just if we're looking at some things, and if we're looking at those electives, to make sure that there is a core unit that we can start with, and which will also fit in with the prerequisites as well. Then I think that'll be probably just a good, like a good place to start, which will probably help RTOs to give the clients or the apprentices some more electives to work with. Thanks.
Thanks. Peter Costa. I think you might be on mute, Peter. No, that's it.
Yep. You can hear me now, I take it.
Yes, we can.
Good. I heard the word engineer mentioned, and also in the context of providing a course that satisfies a need. Now, I'm increasingly getting calls from electricians who are progressing through their Certificate 3 in refrigeration and air conditioning. And the question they are asking, because it's becoming a big thing in the States, is, will I be able to certify? And the answer to that question is, unless you have a degree, the answer to that question is typically no. So as I understand at the moment, even the Cert 4 in this level doesn't have a path to something which they are looking for, which is to be able to certify, and it's really needed. So at the moment, when they're asking me that question, I have to say to them, you need to find a path that gets you to university so you can do a degree, because you've got to get membership of Engineers Australia to be able to fit the criteria to certify in Queensland, in New South Wales, in Victoria, in the ACT, and now in WA as well. So this is becoming a very relevant thing for electricians, because they come from the contracting side where they need to be able to do the certification. And on an electrical side, it's on that, is it the Part 1 solutions, a performance solution? And on the HVAC side, it's for HVAC, so that's a mechanical engineering thing. So that's what they're after. They want to be able to sign off on the work that their companies or the other companies have done. So that's the question. Is there a path that gets us from this Cert 2, Cert 3, Cert 4 to a degree, because that's the level that you need to get to be able to sign off. And if there is, can we create one?
Very good questions, Peter. And I don't believe there is that pathway yet, but it's definitely something that we could be looking at. And our project lead, I think it's Christina, who's looking after those diplomas, advanced diplomas. I think we'll be pondering those questions about the engineers, because we do need to know these things, that exactly what you're saying here, that, if you can't certify and you can't move forward, then is there a pathway from those advanced diplomas or whatever to get that degree? Or at least is there some credit involved? And I know, dealing with some of the universities at the RTO I was at before, we were looking in that space, and they're always not very keen to do a lot of credits in reverse and vice versa. But look, if we're going to move forward as an industry, and if that's something move forward as a vet industry, I should say, and if it's something that industry are requiring, then it's definitely something we need to be looking at to make sure that people who come through that vet system have got a pathway and they're able to, sign off on a job. So yeah, I think it's something that we can discuss and look at moving forward. So yeah, no, very good point.
Yeah, sure. But happy to be involved and help with that. I'm a member
All
of
right.
Engineers Australia. I have a Cert 3 in refrigeration and air conditioning. I
Yep.
train units. I train HVAC units. So
Excellent.
I can see where they're going, and I can tell you that they would make very good professional engineers if they've come up the ranks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great, Peter. Can you just make sure your information is in that chat, and please, jump onto the website and register yourself there for that diploma, advanced diploma, because that'd be great to grab your knowledge there. So
yeah, we'll do.
Thank you. How are we going? Any other thoughts from other people out there? Yeah, no, some great conversations there. Just a few other things that I'll just throw into the mix there when we talk about electives and building out these qualifications and that sort of thing is that under the new training package framework that it's being talked about, and we've been mentioning this at our webinars and whatnot, that the weighting points will be removed from the qualifications. The weighting points in the UEE don't form part of those qualifications anymore. So as we're looking at the way that these qualifications are built, we'll all be needing to be considering how we build out these qualifications without those weighting points as well. So just something else there to add into the mix as we move through this development process. But at PSO, we're finding it really exciting that we can come out with a good product at the end with everybody's help. All right, we've probably had a bit of an open floor, but look, is there anything anyone wants to bring up? Doesn't have to be training package related as such, but anything. Any questions for PSO that we might be able to answer along the way? Vanessa.
Hey, Phil.
Hey.
Just on the electives, I know there's a problem with TAFEs and RTOs being able to offer, the equipment to, or have the resources to implement things like renewable energy. I just wonder how we can incentivise that, if we build in some decent electives around renewables, how do we incentivise the RTOs to actually invest in the resources needed to expose apprentices to those subject areas?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good question. I don't have the answers for you right now, but look, some of the, there's quite a few different ideas floating around at the moment, and I think we'll be teasing them out through our SME groups and that. And I see Steve's hands flowing up. He might have some thoughts or some ideas there as well, but
or maybe an extra element of confusion.
Yeah, maybe.
I think, and Vanessa, look, yeah, it's a valid point, and it's been heard many times. So I think, we can't ignore the fact that the current elective regime, the way it's structured, doesn't work. Like, I think we just say it doesn't work because, Sarah highlighted the 90% of them do the ACMA course for open cabling registration. And while that might have been appropriate 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's some questions as to its appropriateness now as the major elective stream. But I think better training product design will certainly help in being able to work that out. And, being this as a tag, and we can sort of talk a bit more freely about things in this environment, there is a real need to know, do we actually just look at the license as a core rather than bolting electives onto it, and then look at how we then can improve that after they've got their license? So potentially creating skill sets that actually give them something. Again, ACMA is a good example. You actually get it. You do the 2 units of competency, you get your open cabling registration and your endorsement for the Cat 5, 6, 7 and coax. But if you do currently the electives for, say, the renewable energies, you can't go and get your renewable energy accreditation with SAA just on those units. Same for instrumentation. You might be able to do a PLC unit or 2 PLC units, but you don't get the full whack of the Cert 4 that you would be able to take to industry post your trade. So I think we need to have a very open conversation about whether or not the core is for licensing purposes and electives are either Cert 4 bolt-ons or skill sets that, if they do become part of the Cert 3, that they encapsulate all the skills required to be able to perform that task post-trade. Until we can sort of have that conversation, I think we're going to have the same issue, because the RTO needs to know what to put on scope. They also need to know how to resource those units. So whether or not that's just the physical resources that you would have in the workshops or the classrooms, but also to the training and delivery resources that are go then the assessment resources that go with it. So there's a bit of a picture that we need to sort of get going in that space. So that'd be interesting to hear the thoughts of the audience about whether or not we can potentially utilize a core only qual and skill sets outside or skill sets inside that qual.
And then we might also, if you look at that model, there might even be a lot of potential to actually improve those resources, because you might get RTOs that want to specialize in certain areas that really do that particular skill set really well, and they become, you know, specialists in that area, and can feed apprentices or even upskill people through those areas, instead of spreading that load at a very poor quality over a lot of RTOs because of the cost of that that resource. So yeah, it's interesting thoughts.
Bill and Steve, it's Dominic here, one of the ACMA registrars.
Yeah, Dominic.
I totally agree with you, Steve and Vanessa. We need to relook a lot of that area around registration, including renewables. You're right, Steve. It was set up 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ago, and we haven't looked at it since, I'd say, at least prior to COVID. So I would be really, really interested to have that discussion on behalf of the registrars, not on behalf of the ACMA, but on behalf of the registrars. And as you probably know, I've nominated myself to be part of the TAG. So, you know, it's something we can talk. Love it.
Right. Peter had a hand up. Peter Costa.
Again, yes. So the other thing that I've noticed is that the electricians are increasingly moving into the refrigeration and air conditioning side, because the industries have made that equipment very straightforward at a certain level. So certainly the refrigeration side, the low temperature and the ultra low temperature stuff definitely would be something that a refrigeration mechanic is required for. Most of the air conditioning stuff is easily handled by an electrician. The question is about dual trade and a path for the fridgies or those who have started a refrigeration qualification, Cert 3 and so on, to migrate to having an electrical qualification, because it will create a wider number of people that we say we need, because I believe we've been talking about needing 85,000 electricians and so on. And you've got this pool of people who have done most of the electrical work. When I look at my MEM package and compare what I've done and studied, and given the amount of motors and power and electrical work involved and controls and building management systems, so communications as well, covered by the MEM package, it seems as though there's an opportunity to grow that pool of electricians and refrigeration or air conditioning people, which are what seems to be a big need at the moment. Just throw that in the mix, whether there's some means of being able to bring those things together more easily than they currently do. To go from electrician to air conditioning mechanic, so I'll separate those two descriptions, air conditioning mechanic, relatively easy. To go from refrigeration mechanic, which includes a lot of electrical, because remember, the thing works with a motor, and that works with power, single phase and three phase. While we're talking LV, it's well within their capabilities. So you know, a sort of gap training approach would be well received by that sector of the industry and would potentially provide a lot more people to meet a need, which has been stated. Just throw that out there and see if it gets any support.
Thanks, Peter. Steve?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, and I think it probably highlights that the Frigi space is one area where that is probably a very appropriate conversation. A couple of other areas, rail signalling, ESI, we know both of those have licensing requirements that underpin them. So, you know, and I think everyone's on the same page here. There's no thought about watering down anything related to licensing. That's, you know, we don't even have to have that conversation. It's not going to happen. What we do need to understand, though, is that licensing actually appears in other areas outside of what you would call, I guess, the standard electrician doing lights and power. So whether that's domestic or commercial, even in industrial. But how do we then make sure that where we capture these, that they're going to have that underpinning license requirement, so they've met all the licensing requirements, and now they're able to now specialize in those areas, keeping in mind that the generation of people coming through now, the future electrician, will likely have 6 or 7, 8 careers during their time period. So they'll probably work in solar renewable energies. They may then go over to generation. They may work in virtual power plants. They then might go completely outside that and end up in the resource sector. So I think it's really important to understand we've got qualifications. There's also a contract of training arrangement that lives outside of the training package that has to be able to accommodate those things. You can't use the training package to inform training contract. It doesn't really work if you try and do it that way. But what we do need to do is make sure they do work together. So there's some great conversations to be had probably post this. And I think when we send out our RFAs looking for some more advice on this sort of stuff, it'd be good to try and get some of that feedback as well.
Definitely. Thanks, guys. Anyone else want to jump in, give their thoughts? Anyone about what Steve mentioned there, or holding it back until you get onto our SME groups, or you want to jump in now and put your toe in the water, as they say? All right. Well, I will mention what Steve mentioned about that request for advice. So, yes, we do have our full UEE, reviews going on. We are putting together our subject matter expert groups and technical committee and those sorts of things. But our requests for advice will still go out. We still want to be, talking to all of you out there, asking you the questions, giving you a chance to feed back into us. We know people are very busy and can't always get onto, the committees and have time to spare. But if you can fill out the request for advice that we put out, excellent way to bring that feedback back to PSO, and then we can feed that back into those SME groups if you can't get a chance. So no, really good opportunity. Other thing, while this has been happening, I haven't been looking at the chat. I know I could hear a little ping in the background. I think Brett and a couple of the other people were looking after that for me. Is there anything in there that we haven't covered? Anyone that hasn't got an answer within the chat that they might want to bring out on the table? I'm not sure we're all good there, Brett or Steve. I think you might have even been looking in the chat. Is there anything there that we're all good?
Yeah, we've been replying, or there's been a few statements in there more than questions. So
yep,
we'll take note of those and record them.
Yep, no worries. All right. Well, as the slide says there, we do have a tag meeting in October. The request for advice will be released in early August, so watch your inboxes. Yeah, and besides that, I'd just like to thank our chairs and everybody else for attending. And we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.